Hello everyone, I am Brad and this is Watch, Rank, Heart. And it is Friday, which means it's time for the Watched List. This is when I discuss the films I've watched and my feelings about them. This week is sort of a weird one. Are there films or TV shows that you are compelled to watch but aren't sure you really want to? Like a film in a series or a franchise you've heard is bad, but you feel like you should watch it for yourself anyway. That's what I'm doing today. This week, I'm reviewing two films I felt obligated to watch for whatever reason. Maybe I've seen all the others, or I'm just plain morbidly curious about it. And I will also watch two films from 1995. So, let's do this!
I hope we're going to have some gratuitous sex and violence.
I certainly hope so, too.
So let's start with an odd one, which is Never Say Never Again. The Irving Kershner-directed Bond film, which isn't a canon Bond film according to MGM and Eon Productions. Letterboxd is not kind to this film. It has an average rating of 2.7 out of 5, but the critics at the time were pretty generous. It holds firm at a Rotten Tomatoes score of 71% fresh. And I gotta be honest, I don't know what the critics are thinking about this one, but let's get started with my feelings first. On the positive end, it's actually nice to see Connery back as Bond with all the Bondisms, or is it Conneryisms, really? If there's anything about this movie that I feel comfortable about, it's that I really like Connery as Bond, and it seems like Connery just fits so well with Bond, or his style of Bond, I should say. Okay, so let's get past the positives and go right to the negatives. Oh my god, this film made me appreciate how much time, money, and effort goes into all the MGM Bond. Really, this film just feels like a B movie. Honestly, I'll put it this way, it felt like a fan movie. If this was a fan movie, I would be like, okay, that's impressive. But it's not. This is actually made by a studio, so I was watching this going, what am I watching right now? Holy crap. Even like the bad Bond films, A View to a Kill, Die Another Day, those movies, there is a lot of effort to make the movie look really good. It has really good actors. Like the one I hate the most, which is A View to a Kill, has Christopher Walken in it. Die Another Day has Halle Berry in it. There's really good actors in these movies, so they take time and effort and money to make them look as good as possible. This film looks cheap. Oh my god, this looks cheap. This feels like a straight-to-video movie, and it's almost embarrassing at times how cheap this film looks. And there's just things in this movie that are not here that are present in other Bond films. The wittiness, the humor, the clever dialogue. Most of them have clever dialogue. Everything in this film just feels like it's several notches below what you would expect from a Bond film. And it's highly disappointing to watch this and not have any of that. Honestly, it feels like the writers and the filmmakers of this film knew what a Bond movie was, like, by the outline, but didn't get any of the details right. It actually looked really off, especially with scenes with Connery, when he's saying, it honestly just feels like they just did not get what made Connery's Bond really good. Another problem I have with this film, dreadfully boring. Really boring film. And on top of that, way too long. This is nearly 2 hours and 30 minutes. I honestly almost fell asleep a couple times during this. A lot of the action sequences are not great either, so they're not compelling. The plot line, which honestly, the plot of the film, which is a remake of Thunderball, which is a Bond movie that I just wasn't too thrilled with. I thought it was fine, but I didn't think it was all that great. Honestly, this story, everything about it is just boring. It just does not work at all. None of the characters are interesting. Nothing is good in this film. But I think one of the biggest problems I had with this film is this felt like a more Bond film starring Sean Connery. A lot of the things in this movie feel ridiculous. I mean, there's a shark in this movie that is controlled by a computer chip. There is a sequence where Bond is playing a video game against another person. It's just absolutely silly. And it felt like it fit in with a Moore film. A bad Moore film, but a Moore film. But seeing Connery doing all this stuff just felt really off. I think the most I could say is that this felt like a Timu Bond. It felt like a knockoff Bond. It just felt like an inauthentic, fake Bond. This film made me appreciate all of the Bond films from MGM, including the terrible ones. And honestly, the only rating I can give this film is a 0.5 star out of 5, even though I did like seeing Connery again as Bond, and this was just a complete waste of time. Just for him and for anyone who wants to watch this. I think this was awful. This was a really bad Bond film. And if this was part of the canon series of Bond, this would easily clear as the worst of them. But this is not just about my opinion. This is also the opinion of people on Letterboxd. So let's see what everyone felt on Letterboxd here. Let's start off with Robert, who gave this 2 stars. And he says pretty succinctly, the fake Bond movie feels fake in every way. Absolutely agree with you. Let's do this half-star review with Professor Dorkman. And he basically says that Sean Connery is too old and he had a very deflated performance, and the production was lackluster. And he also says there are a number of reasons this is not regarded as canon, nor is regarded moderately. And he says if you want to enjoy the Bond franchise, just act like this and the original Casino Royale does not exist. Oh my god, I forgot about Casino Royale with Niven. I guess I'm watching that soon. At one point, am I? Oh dear. Oh no. So let's go with this 3-star review with Lau. It says Lou, but it rhymes with wow. So I'm going to say, I'm guessing it's Lau. And it's a 3-star review with a heart. And he says it's Thunderball Take 2. This has less spectacle from the original, but in a way, it feels fitting for a movie with an older Bond. Never Say Never Again has very solid bad guys in Klaus Maria Brandauer, Barbara Carrera, and Max von Sydow. And he thinks Max von Sydow should have more screen time. But I can't say the actors portraying the MI6 staff worked for me. Bernie Casey as Felix was great, though. At the end, he calls this a flawed, at times bland, but still a good enough time, especially when watched with a fun watch partner. You know, it might be good with somebody who will have fun watching the movie with you, sure. So here is the most charitable one I've seen, and this is from Phil Noble Jr. He gives it 3.5 stars. So he just has a list here. So first off, he says what this lacks is the proper Bond score and other Eon trappings. I gotta tell you, I actually missed the music from a Bond film when watching this, so I definitely agree there. But what it contains, according to him, a great Bond villain, great Bond women, sharks, scuba, Bond dancing, video game fight, Bernie Casey as Felix Leiter, Bond besting a henchman with his own urine, oh yeah, and Bond riding a Bentley, horse, motorcycle, bicycle, and a one-man rocket thing. That looked ridiculous. He says he loves this Superman 3 ass movie. Okay. I gotta appreciate somebody who can look past all that and still enjoy it. So, good on you, Phil Noble Jr.
I'm not a general, but we are all soldiers. And up until now, we have fought for nothing more than another day's survival.
Next up is last year's sequel to the 2000 Oscar-winning smash Gladiator called, well, creatively enough, Gladiator II, starring Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, and Denzel Washington, directed by Ridley Scott. The Letterboxd crowd thought it was decent, averaging it out at a 3.3 out of 5, while the original averaged out at around a 4.1 out of 5. Critics were also charitable, giving it an average of 70% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, while the original scored an 80% overall. As for Oscars, the sequel was only nominated for Best Costume Design, while the original, well, got nominated for 12 times, won 5, including Best Picture and Best Actor, as well as Best Director. There's only really one thing to say about Gladiator II, and that is it is not as good as the first one. In fact, it is a sizable step down in a number of ways. Let's start with the actors. Paul Mescal is just not anywhere near as good as Russell Crowe was in the first movie. In fact, watching this made me realize how important Russell Crowe was to the first Gladiator movie. The other actors are fine in this movie. I think Denzel Washington puts up a decent performance as the villain in the film, but overall, like, the actors are okay. They're just not as good as the original. The look is also a step down in this movie. The way that Gladiator was shot was not only epic, but also in the scenes that were not in the arena had a very ethereal kind of feel to it, whereas this movie kind of went a step back into something else that I just did not really like. And what's also stepped down is also the characters in the story. It kind of feels like a retread in some sorts of Gladiator 1, so that really doesn't help it all that much. Hell, I'll even say the fight scenes are a step down. There are much more grander fight scenes in the first act of the film, but as to the Gladiator stuff, I think all they really did was do the same fight scenes but make it bloodier, which, is okay, but again, it just doesn't match what the first one did. In almost every way, the second movie is just a step down from the first. Does that make the film bad? No. It's just different in a number of ways. I think one of the reasons why that Maximus in the first one is a better character than Lucius is in the second one is because a lot of the film in the first film concentrated on Maximus, where this film tried to be a little more sprawling. It kind of centered around 4 different characters, which was Paul Mescal's character, Pedro Pascal's character, Connie Nielsen, and Denzel Washington, as well as the 2 emperors. The film tried to spread itself out to be much more encompassing, but because of that, it made the film a little too long. On top of that, the political stuff that was going on wasn't all that interesting or fascinating. Part of what would have made that better is if we would have gotten to know the characters a little bit more, which to me, the good idea would have been to just stick with maybe 2 or 3 characters. I would probably say Paul Mescal's character, Pedro Pascal's character, and Denzel Washington's character. Just centered around those 3, and then get to know all 3 of those characters and what they're doing, and go from there. But really, the film concentrated much more on Pascal, Nielsen, and Denzel than it did Mescal in this. I think that's the reason why Paul Mescal's character in this movie just couldn't compare to Russell Crowe's character in the first film, because you don't get to know him as much. And in a number of ways, it's kind of like a carbon copy of Maximus in the first film. Speaking of those characters, the connection between Maximus in the first film and Lucius in the second film feels really forced. The film tries to make it into some kind of surprise, but honestly, within the first few minutes of Connie Nielsen's character on screen, I kind of figured it out right away what was starting to happen. Again, it's not necessarily bad, but in terms of like character development and emotions, it wasn't really all that interesting. And that's, I think, the big thing about this film. I don't necessarily think Gladiator II is a bad film. It's just not as exciting and it's not as interesting as the first one. And the first one was really buoyed by Russell Crowe's fantastic performance as Maximus in this film. Remembering Crowe in the first film, remembering like how visceral he was in the film and how he commanded the screen the way he did, and seeing Mescal trying to do an imitation of that just showed basically how his character was not as good as Maximus, and I don't think Mescal was also as good as Crowe in the first one either, so it was really hard to not compare the two in this. As for a score, I'm going to give the film 2.5 out of 5. Again, I don't think it's a bad film, it's just nowhere near as good as the first film. And there are a number of things that other people have said about this that I'm going to share as I get into the Letterboxd reviews, but overall, 2.5 stars out of 5 for me for Gladiator 2. It's fine. It's entertaining enough, but it's just nowhere near as good as the first film. Alright, so let's see what the Letterboxd community thinks of Gladiator 2. And we're going to start with Irving here. He gave it 4 stars and a heart. He says it's engaging and thrilling from the very first scene. Ridley Scott certainly maintained his exceptional standard with the sequel. While it may lack the profound emotional resonance of the original, it certainly retains its gripping intensity. And he concludes with, Paul Mescal delivered a remarkable performance. He is certainly a talent worth investing in. Denzel's character provided a delightful layer to the film, and it's evident he relished the role. What an outstanding antagonist. So let's go to the next one, which is a 2.5 star rating from Nicholas Javanoff, and he just says, unnecessary. Yeah, I kind of have to agree. Although I'm not exactly offended by it, like I would with some sequels that are unnecessary, but yeah, I would kind of have to agree with Nicholas here. This was pretty unnecessary. Let's get into the third review, which is another 2.5 star one from TerrorVision84. I had to get this translated from German by Google, so TerrorVision84, if I mess this up, that's why, and I apologize. Basically, he says, what the F, what did I just see? Sharks in the Coliseum? Need that? Gladiator 2 is like the pulpy version of the Ridley Scott classic. More sex and we would have had the level of Sam Raimi's Spartacus series. Gladiator 2 is not a good film, but it looks great and the production is entertaining. Yeah, I kind of have to agree. He has a point there. It's like a pulpier version. But I think what made it pulpier is just the copious amounts of blood in the film that was in there. Like, it was kind of unnecessary in some parts. But I don't think it's a good movie either. But I don't think it's bad. I just think it's It's there, is what I would put it as. And finally, the last review we have from Lucia. She gives it 4 stars. And basically, she's just listing a bunch of things about Pedro Pascal that she would like to do. I really have a question. I have had this question for a number of years now regarding Pedro Pascal. What is it about him that people love so much? I don't think he's a bad actor. I just think he's an okay actor. There are other actors I think are a lot better, and I just don't see what other people see in him. Like, I understand Timothée Chalamet. Not only is he incredibly talented, but women apparently like skinny, small guys now, which I don't get. Like, whatever. Okay, fine. But like Pedro Pascal, I honestly don't get it as an actor. Maybe it's just because women are very much attracted to him, which is another thing I don't quite understand. Oh, I'm not a woman and I'm not gay, so I guess I wouldn't. So there we go. But I don't understand the love for Pedro Pascal. If you understand it, or you love Pedro Pascal and you want to tell me in the comments why that is, let me know. I would love to hear it. Just keep it somewhat clean. Not entirely clean, but somewhat clean. Please. Thank you.
This is our chance to seek some real fortune and to pay back Dog what we owe him. What could be better than that?
Let's continue with another. I felt compelled to watch this film, with a film from 1995 that is considered the biggest box office bomb of that year and one of the biggest of all time, Cutthroat Island. It stars Gina Davis, Matthew Modine, and Frank Langella, and was directed by Rennie Harlin. It holds a Letterboxd score of a paltry 2.8 out of 5. It also has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 40%, which gives it a rotten distinction. And at the time, the film lost its studio over $100 million, which is over $200 million adjusted for inflation today. And this catastrophic box office eventually led to the bankruptcy of the production house that financed it, Carolco. So why was I compelled to watch Cutthroat Island? Well, it's one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. That's what compelled me. I was like, I gotta see how bad this is. And I gotta be honest with you, it's not terrible. It's not good either, but it's not terrible. So let's start with the good. I love the set designs, I love the practical stunts, and the locations. This film looks really good. Whether you're talking about inside buildings, or the ships, or just how anything looks in the film, I think it looks really good. Honestly, you can watch this and tell how expensive this movie was. The sets and the practical designs are really good, and especially with the explosions. They look really good in this movie. So let's get into some of the negative here. Gina Davis, who is usually a very good actor, is surprisingly dull in this film. She kind of keeps herself at a level like this throughout the entire time. Even when I'm telling somebody to do this, do that, or I'm going to kill you, she has this exact tone all throughout the movie. It's like she is bored throughout the entire movie. It's really bad. It's surprisingly bad for her. Matthew Modine is fine, but she has no chemistry with Gina Davis, so there's that. Frank Langella, he's fine as a villain, but in like a campy, snarling, mustache-twirling sort of way. It's kind of corny, but it's fine. I think the one big problem I have with this film is the screenplay, because the dialogue in this movie is awful. It is so bad. And the dialogue and screenplay gives this weird juxtaposition, because you have this beautiful looking film that has all this care and all this visual splendor to it that is really good. And then you have this almost B-C grade screenplay that really clashes with everything. Like, this should have been probably one of the bigger movies that year. And because of how the screenplay is, it kind of destroys any excitement or any attachment that you have with the characters. The dialogue, I can't emphasize this enough, the dialogue in this movie is awful. And I think the story as well is not that great. But I would say that, honestly, this is just a pirate-ass pirate movie. If you're just looking for that, you've got it here. And if you haven't seen it, and only because you've heard of how bad it is, I gotta be honest with you, it's honestly a fun time. It's a fun movie to watch. But you have to turn your brain off and just enjoy the stunts and spectacle. If you're watching this thinking, it's like Pirates of the Caribbean before Pirates of the Caribbean, stop. No. The characters from the Pirates of the Caribbean are a lot better than this. So if you just want to watch some stunts, some explosions, some spectacle, I'd say this movie isn't bad. I actually was somewhat enjoying it, but only somewhat, because once you hear the dialogue, you're like, ugh, this is awful. Oh my God. I'm going to be pretty charitable to Cutthroat Island. I'm going to give it 2.5 stars out of 5. I think it's decent. It's not good. It's not bad. It's fine. It's in that middle road where I can say that I can't say it's bad, but I won't say it's really good either. It's just fine. So if you are looking for a specific thing to turn your brain off and just enjoy the bombast and the spectacle and the explosions, I think Cutthroat Island is not a bad choice. So check it out if you haven't. Alright, and this is not just about my opinion. Let's talk about the opinions of everybody on Letterboxd. Let us start with a 3-star review from Valor Films, and he says, kind of underrated. And I gotta be honest with you, it kind of is. Again, it's not a great film, but from what I keep hearing about this movie is that it's awful. It was so bad it closed down the studio that created it. I gotta be honest, it's not that bad. And considering some of the films that make money nowadays, I mean, this is markedly better, I would say. Like in an entertaining way, not in like an artistic way. So I kind of have to agree with Valor Films. 3 stars. Kind of underrated. I agree. Let's get into another 3-star review. By the way, a lot of positive reviews for this film. It does have a 2.8 average on Letterboxd, but the first few pages are filled with positive reviews. 3 stars, 3.5 stars. I was very surprised by this. Let's do a 3-star review with a heart from Cat Halo Movies. And this person says, I admire the scale, the massive set pieces, the practical stunts, the practical sets, and the old-fashioned feel. I absolutely agree. However, there's a lot wrong with this movie. The script is bad. The usually brilliant Davis is not bringing her best. And while I like Modine, the pair have very little chemistry. The script has witless banter during some action, which only highlights this. Harlan makes it big, but not especially exciting or fun. I 100% agree with Cat Halo Movies here. If you look at everything visually, this film is actually very good. But when it comes to characters and the dialogue, it's awful. Like, it is a very, very expensive B movie, is how I would put it. And let me get into the last one I'm going to show from Letterboxd. This is from Comrade Yui, and this person just says, 4 writers on a film is never a good sign. Yes, it is never a good sign. I agree, Comrade. And finally, the last film from 1995 I will be watching is Wong Kar-Wai's Fallen Angels. But I guess that this isn't really an obligation film because I actually want to see this. I guess I felt compelled to watch it because I'm starting to like more of Wong Kar-Wai's films, so I was like, I really should see Fallen Angels. So I think obligation is not the right word for it. Take that as you will. But anyway, Fallen Angels has a Letterboxd score of 4.2 out of 5. That's very high for a Letterboxd. And it's on the Letterboxd list of top 250 films with the most fans. And it's got a Rotten Tomatoes score of 95% fresh. So with positive, let's just talk about the things that we should already know about Wong Kar-Wai, which is he has a beautiful visual style with cinematography by Christopher Doyle. It also has great music, which also you come to expect with Wong Kar-Wai's films. He's got some great music in his movies. My God. So as for the storylines, I like the storyline between the hitman and the agent. I think this was a very interesting story to watch. It took me a bit to warm up to the mute guy storyline, but I liked it as the film was going on. But if I'm also honest, this doesn't hit as hard emotionally for me as In the Mood for Love, or a film I just reviewed last month, which is Happy Together. But I still think this is a solid film. The only other criticism I have is I don't like the action sequences in this film, so when the hitman does his hits, I just don't think they're shot all that well. Overall, I'm going to give this film 3.5 stars out of 5. I think it's very good. Again, I still think that In the Mood for Love and Happy Together are better films. But for a Wong Kar-Wai film, I think it's very good. I like the visual style, I like the music, and I like the storylines, even though I think one of the storylines took me a little bit really warm up to and like. So yeah, 3.5 stars out of 5 for me for Fallen Angels. Alright, so let's see what the Letterboxd community thinks of Fallen Angels. This is Stephen Clark, and he gave it a heart. He did not give it a rating. And he says it's a cyclone of stylistic expression. Wong Kar-Wai's Fallen Angels is a grungy, gross, and often ugly visual feast. He continues, it feels so unique and intoxicating to see. At times, you are just following along, trying to read the film's pulse, and inaccurately hoping to find the next beat, which always comes in a way you don't expect. Alright, and this is the last review we have from TB1. He gives it 4.5 stars out of 5, and he says this is a beautiful, disjointed film with a bizarre plot, and Wong Kar-Wai still knows how to leave you feeling charmed with a warm, fuzzy feeling afterwards. There's just so much style and substance with the camera work, ridiculous soundtrack editing, and gorgeous old-school nostalgic style cinematography. And with that, that does it for this episode of Watch, Rank, Heart. Before I go, let me ask you a question. Are there films you are compelled to watch, even if you have a feeling you're not going to like them? Let me know in the comments, and also let me know what you think of my reviews. You can follow me at Letterboxd and X at Watch, Rank, Heart. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and share with your friends. I'm Brad from Watch, Rank, Heart. Thank you for watching, and remember, we all watch and rate movies, but you give them the heart that makes them live forever.